Okay, we are live from the Hive.
Hey guys.
Welcome. It's a beautiful, sunny Thursday afternoon. Just another session of Live from the Hive today.
This is Ashley. She is awesome. She's helping us make sure that you guys all get to have field days with me, Eliese, when we're out beekeeping. And today we're going to be talking all about queens. I've been getting a lot of calls about people wanting queens. I raise queens and sell them as a treatment-free beekeeper. I've been doing it for over a decade. So we have different strategies. Today we're going to be grafting. So we're going to show you how to pull out and how I do grafting. And then we're going to do a Q&A while we drive over to the mating yard from here. And then we're going to go through some of the mating nucs. And we'll see some that have virgins, so you can see what a virgin looks like. And then we'll see some mating nucs that have mated queens in them, so you can see how I cage them. I don't mark my queens, and I would have today if I could find the paint pen, but my daughter decided it was better used for crafts. So this year's the color white, but we won't have marked queens today. So I'm going to show you guys how we raise queens. So we're going to graft today.
Yeah, and if you have any questions during this Live from the Hive, just put them in the chat and we'll answer them.
So this is Hive 90. This hive, I'm currently doing a queen rearing course with the Alberta Beekeepers Commission tech transfer program. We're partnering up to offer more online, post-secondary online accredited courses. So we did a hygienic test, which is a method that comes out of Minnesota Bee Lab, which Renata, who's the head of our tech transfer program, did her master's out of the Minnesota Bee Lab with Marla Spivak. And they do a system of using liquid nitrogen to freeze kill larva or pupa underneath the cappings. You aim for a white-headed bee stage for the pupa, so younger. And then you freeze kill the number of cells, and then you put it back in the hive, and then you let them have, the bees have it at it for 24 hours in the brood nest. You come back, and if the bees are sensitive to distress or sick bees underneath the capping, unperforated capping, they will remove that brood in 24 hours. And that is a hygienic trait. It's a genetic trait. They know the markers for it and have to breed for it. Well, when we sampled Hive 90, it was hygienic, like 100% hygienic, which is really exciting. And not a surprise, as a treatment-free beekeeper, you can't breed from dead bees, and I've been doing this for 13 years, so and breeding queens for 10. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of the colonies I selected as breeders, if we went through that, most of them were hygienic. But now that we know that they are, this is now the colony that we're going to exclusively graft from today. We have 2 colonies that are called shook swarms, or colonies that are full of bees in little mating nucs that are ventilated, but they don't have any brood. There's just a frame of honey and frame of pollen, and that's where our grafts are going to go. So right now, we need to go into Hive 90, and we need to find a frame of graftable brood. Now, a frame of graftable brood is different than a frame of brood. We're going to be extracting honey here soon, because we've got a lot of honey coming in right now. That's pretty heavy. Okay. And so I'm going to start just like always. I always inspect my colonies from the bottom up, so I'm closing the hive as I go. Let's hope this colony didn't swarm. It's a lot less bees in here than there was last week. And it's, with all that heat and rain, it's been an interesting time. I'm sure you've all noticed, to be managing bees in Alberta. So I'm going into the heart of the brood nest. Oh, they're mad. Let's hope they're queen right, or else we won't have anything to graft from. So what we're looking for is a frame just older than eggs. So day 3, after being laid, they're newly hatched eggs and larvae. So we're looking for very young brood. So this is capped, no queen on it. Are there any questions as I peruse?
No questions yet. But Jim says, hey. Jesse says, beautiful hives.
Oh, thanks, Jesse. Hi, Jim. Yeah, we're just looking for a nice frame of larvae, very young, newly hatched. So we've got, and I want a fair amount, right? Like these are kind of, you can tell they're mixed between cat brood and open brood. I've got about 60 grafts I need to make today in the truck, and you're going to join me for that. And so I want to make sure that when I grab a couple of frames that it's really good to graft from. So this one's not too shabby. Kind of mixed up. No swarm cells though, so this is a good sign. And we know I can see eggs and larvae, so I know it's clean right, so it didn't swarm on me. Ashley and I were just at the other yard moving some bee equipment, and I opened up a lid of some stored equipment. What do we find, Ashley?
A swarm.
A swarm of my bees from the other yard had moved into stored equipment. I love it when that happens. Passive swarm capture is my favorite kind of swarm capture. So I'm interested in this frame, so I'm going to leave that there and go into the next box. Because I like grafting from deep frames, preferably, to be honest, because what ends up happening with the deep frames is there's more cells per frame for me to choose from, which I like. I like doing that. Let's have a peek. Now this green frame I have in here is a drone frame. Usually beekeepers use them for culling drones. This is full of eggs, not larvae. So this would have hatched the other day, and you can see, let's see if you can see all the eggs in there. So that's too young. If you move eggs, you can crack them. They don't have the jelly to work as the surface tension to make it easy to move, because you don't actually touch the larva when you use your grafting tool, and I use a Chinese grafting tool. You're actually just using the surface tension of the royal jelly that's fed to the newly hatched larva. And then, maybe, just maybe, we might have a winner chicken dinner. And then here's Hive 90, a frame of cat brood, just to get an idea of the quality of this colony. Here, a nice, beautiful frame of cat brood, and wherever there isn't brood, there's honey. Beautiful, beautiful honey this year. The bees have been going gangbusters, but this is what I've been keeping an eye out for. So we've got some queen cups started. So I have a peek in here. I can peel back queen cells or cups to see if there's eggs inside, and there aren't any, so they're just play cups. They're not cells until there's brood in them, but you can peel them back and peek in them as long as you've seen eggs. If you haven't seen eggs, abstain from opening up queen cells, because it might be your colony replacing a queen that has died. I mean, it could be beekeeper error. So let me think. I might take this frame, a little bit old-ish. Let me just see. So here's the drone comb that they're pulling out, or drawing out. So we've got drones being born, and then they're drawing this out. So usually you can put this in a colony when the drones are capped. You take it out, you freeze it. It kills the drone brood. It also kills the varroa mites under the cell. But because I breed queens, I put these drone frames into colonies that I like, so that I have a strong population of drone inside my nest. Now you can see the nectar flow is on. Can you see that liquid coming out? And the other thing to notice is this is a medium frame in a deep box. I'll do this to draw out medium frames for my honey supers instead of putting a whole box on of empty foundation or whatever for medium boxes. I'll just stuff them into a deep box in the brood nest, get them to pull it off. You can see this is all drone comb. I can brush the bees off, scrape the drone comb off, and put this into a honey super bowl. This one especially because it's full of nectar. But yeah, but then, you know, as a treatment-free beekeeper, especially, you know, I'm raising drones, so aren't I raising varroa mites? Well, I'm also breaking down these colonies very aggressively through the building of mating nukes and splits, and they all end up queenless at least once throughout the season. So they go through a natural brood-rearing cycle. Okay, so I like this one, I like this one. I'm gonna just quickly check and see if I can find something even better. Here. Let's see what we can find. You can see I'm not looking for the queen. I don't care where she is. I know she's in here, but her location is irrelevant right now because what I'm doing is I'm actually just looking for larvae, not looking for queen or anything like that. 2 days ago, that would have been a perfect frame. Another play cup here, see? A couple more. Nothing in them, so I'm keeping up with the Joneses here. They're not wanting to take off on me or anything. Does anyone here manage mediums or deeps or mix them up? And what do you think about that? How's that been mixing up your box sizes? Anyone want to chime in on what you guys manage? Do you manage? This is all honey. See, yeah, we're going to be extracting pretty quick here. So I think we're going to be taking from this and taking from that frame. Okay. So now, how do we do this? Brood in this heat always ends up drying out. So you always have to have wet cloths on you to keep the larva nice and moist. Okay, so I'm going to get a couple cloths here ready for the 2 frames I'm bringing to the truck with me to graft. Okay, now the other thing is when you're brushing, when you're going to remove the bees off the frame, don't shake. You don't want to be shaking up your larva. It'll be harder to graft if all the larvae are slumped to the bottom or the side that you shook down on. So it's best if you can use a bee brush. Okay, so instead of shaking the bees off this frame, oh, it's wet. I'm going to quickly just brush the bees off. I'm going to look real quick though to make sure I'm not rolling the queen up anywhere.
Katie Merchant says that they manage all deeps.
Oh, Katie, and you're on an elevated structure still on the side of your house, aren't you? How is that going up and down that ladder, Katie? Gently, see how I'm flicking them into the box? I'm not rolling, I'm not doing long sweeps. I just do little flicks. Okay. Get most of the bees off, because whatever the bees that come in, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. They just end up in the truck with me. Okay, so I'm going to cover this up with a damp rag to keep that larva well moistened. I'm just going to set this down here for a second, and I'm going to grab the next frame, which is this one.
Katie says, yes, ma'am. So heavy.
It's so heavy, right? It's tricky, you know, figuring out adaptable spaces to be beekeeping in backyards, when you have kids, when you have space. But I mean, you can be doing this shook swarm, this queen rearing method. Like our course that we're building out, it's for people with 2 hives or more. 4 is great if you have, then you have some genetic choice of like selection of what you like. But you can raise queens in your own backyard. You can sell unhatched queen cells for $5 each. You can, I'm just going to quickly move that. So that's all eggs. Just quickly gonna just move that. I feel like that was, yeah. Here. I'm going to put this one back because we're going to run over the truck now. Yeah, you can raise queens in your own backyard in the city, especially because there's a lot of urban beekeepers. You end up with like a pretty nice drone congregation area locally, and you can make some money off of it. I mean, I sell my queens for $50 a piece, and I'll probably raise 200 this year, and without really working that hard. It's fun. So come with me to the track. Ashley's gonna follow and go into the passenger seat.
Got a nice comment here from Jesse again. Jesse, you're too kind. He says, Eliese and the team at ABC Bees, y'all are my heroes and inspiration to treat my bees with incredible care. Your beekeeping course is the greatest, and I cannot thank you enough.
Aww.
Thanks, Jesse. That's so nice to hear.
Go to the passenger side. Yeah, it'll be easier for you. Okay. So we're going to be using a Chinese grafting tool to move 40-year-old larva, which is really 40-year-old brood, which is really 1-day-old larva, because it takes them a couple days to hatch out from eggs. So the younger you get them, the better the take. So I've got to take my veil off, which I should have done before there we go. So I can put my headlamp on. So if you have bad vision, as my headlamp's covered in beeswax, if you have bad vision, you might want to buy a pair of reading glasses from the drugstore, different magnifications. So here I've got 2 grafting frames on my lap, both covered with wet rags, because it's a warm day out, even though it's more humid than usual here in Alberta. And what I like to do is, so I've got it partially covered, and then I have my grafting frame. So what I have here is my JZBZ bars with these cups. So these are grafting cups that you put into. They come in different colors. This one happens to be amber. And what is best case scenario is this frame would have been ideally overnight inside when I made my shook swarms. So all the bees would have been in there. So if these had been primed, is the term, there'd be wax around the edges of these cups. But to be honest, I've had great success not priming them. So I'm just getting all the dust out. So I have my grafting 15 cells a bar, 15, 30, 45, and then another 30 up there. So here's my Chinese grafting tool. So I keep it inside a cup of water, and you don't want it so wet that water is going to pool into the cup. You want it damp enough that the bamboo piece and the little piece of bone, I don't think they make them by bone anymore. I think that's plastic. I don't know. Human bones. No, just joking. And then you use this tool, and it's bendy. So it actually slides in the side wall of the cup, and then it scoops underneath. See, that's the problem. We don't want that water there. So we're going to keep that. And so then we slide it underneath the larva and the royal jelly, and the surface tension of the sticky royal jelly holds on to the larva, but also sticks to the little tiny spoon here. And then we're going to take it and plunge it into the cup. So I'm going to have a little peek here, and this is the size that we are searching for when we're doing this. I don't know if you can see that.
Just barely.
Barely. It's tiny. So the larva is very little. Does it help if I put the light on it? Can you see it?
Oh yeah, here we go.
Do you see how little that is? It's almost invisible. So it should be mostly jelly more than larva. So this hatched today. Is that a pretty good visual? Mm-hmm. Crazy small, right? That's why if you need reading glasses, if you wear glasses already, that's what you should be doing. So for me, I've done a lot of this. So I'm pretty proficient. Now, one of the things I failed to do, whoopsie daisy, oopsies, is I'm going to just switch these up. I need a damp cloth for my grafts. And I left them out in the field. That's fine, because this one is leaning against a damp cloth, and I can work quickly from this frame. So yeah, I'm just like, as I go in, I just use a tool, and I always have more than one tool in my arsenal, because it can be, sometimes they just stop working as well. Sometimes they're just not as efficient. So I switch up the tools as I'm working. It's not always, just because the tool is working for a little bit doesn't mean it'll always work. And then I just kind of move on through. I try and stay, whoops, I tossed the little egg. Sorry, little egg. and try and work with some sort of consistency so I'm not just kind of willy-nilly everywhere. But it's tough to do that while I'm also talking to you guys. Yeah, so I just, grab a little larva, tuck her into a little cup. Grab a little larva, tuck her into a cup. And then these go into the little cups. And then once these are all filled up, we put them into the starter colony, which is a queenless colony full of bees that don't have any queen or any brood to tend. So their ability to produce royal jelly is very high. There's lots of food in there, but there's no foragers. It's not open. They can't go anywhere. And that's what we end up doing. Any questions? Actually, it's easier to do work from the top up here.
For those unfamiliar with ABCBs and kind of where we are we, Elise?
Oh, we're in Crossfield. Well, right now we're just west of Crossfield. We beekeep in the beautiful foothills of the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, Canada. And we have been doing beekeeping education and training here since 2010. And so we specialize in beekeeper training and education for hobbyist and small-scale beekeepers. So if you don't know what you're doing, or you're thinking about doing it, or you feel like you know what you're doing, but you feel like maybe a little help along the way would be great, we have an awesome newsletter. We have free courses that change up every month or two. We have excellent opportunities for keynote speakers through our Master Academy series that's still running. It's going to run until December. We have all kinds of stuff always going on, because our goal is to make sure that everyone can feel confident in their husbandry skills. But mostly, I just want everyone who is passionate about beekeeping to feel supported in figuring out how to do things different all the time. I mean, that's why we have this hobby. That's why we do this. It's super fun to just nerd out and learn new things and get beekeeping, I'm sure you all understand, because you're on here nerding out about bees in the afternoon instead of doing something else.
Bee fever.
Bee fever, yeah. This is not so happy, this little grafting tool. There we go. Let's get over here now. Yeah, so I'm on to the second. If you want, can you zoom in on what I've got going on in here? If you could see them. Can you see the little larvas in there? I've got a tiny little larva here. Just keep track so you don't put two larvas into the same cup. And I mean, this is not an easy skill, what I'm doing. It takes some finesse. And so, I mean, it's really fun just to try it. Get all the equipment, throw it in, give it a go, give it a try, and then, see what happens. If you end up being really successful at it, where, your grafts are taken and you raise all these little queen cells, then you can panic about what to do with them after. But in the meantime, get one of these cool little grafting tools and try grafting larvae. It can be kind of finicky because they are so little. You can't really see. It's more of a flick of the wrist than it is a visual action. Once you get the handling down, you get kind of quick with it. And there's a lot of variability. So on our website, there's a section called free resources, and there's all these free downloadable PDFs. And one of the things we created was a flow chart saying, why did my queen rearing fail? And it asks you all the questions and takes you down a rabbit hole of was your starter queenless? Yeah. Did you have syrup and feeder inside your starter? Yes. Did you make sure that you graft from the right size brood? Yes. Did you? And so it just works your way through so that if you end up at the end and your queen cell should have worked and it didn't, then there's something else going on. But at least helps you ferret out where the variables that are consistent with issues being found in queen rearing, because there's a lot of moving parts. So the first moving part was building that cell starter, which, you know, you'll see here in a minute when we drop this in. Once I'm done the next row of graft, we'll go drop this into the queenless starter, and you'll be able to see what I have in there. And then, you know, and then there's everything from like using the grafting tools. Are you grabbing the right age larva? Are they young enough? Because if you grab them too old, you aren't actually grafting queens, you're creating emergency queen cells, and your bees aren't going to tend emergency queen cells once you push that queen cell into a queen right finisher. So we start these cells into that shook swarm, or that queenless colony. We start them, and too big, and we push them after 24 hours into a queen right finisher. So that's a colony that has a queen in it, but below a queen excluder. And you surround the queen cells grafts that we've made, you surround them with open brood. So the nurse bees don't abandon the queen cells they started. And like, that's the humbling part about this, is your queens will be finished even in a queen right colony, because your bees are like these beautiful critters that like all babies deserve to become mature and taken care of. So if the queen cells that are developing in these cups, this frame that I'm grafting into now, if it gets put beside a whole bunch of open brood, those nurse bees will feed them royal jelly and take care of all of them, which is so nice. You can do a queenless finisher, so you can finish them. But what can happen in that case is that colony is queenless. So all of a sudden they start having preferential treatment for some queens over others, because they feel like there's a competitive event going on in their queens to... No, I damaged that one. Sorry, little girl. And yes, I'm eating the larva, if you're wondering.
What's the flavor profile?
Royal jelly. It just tastes like royal jelly, which is acidic. It's sour. Funny story about licking the grafting tool. A friend of mine was telling me that he had a guy that he would graft with, and he could never, ever, ever get his grafts to survive. Like, they always were never take. But they were working together, and he looked at the guy, and the guy was grafting and licking his tool, and grafting and licking his tool. And then he would go out, have a cigarette, nicotine, right? Pesticide. And then come back in and lick his grafting tool and lick his grafting tool. And finally he's like, you know, I think your spit is killing the little larva. And sure enough, it was. So if you're a smoker, don't do what I'm doing. Drip it in some like water, or I've heard like a older published article I read from the 50s was all about dipping your tool in apple juice. That the sugar worked as a primer and helped with the colony. I don't know. I've never tried it. But you could try priming your cells with apple juice. Okay, great. So 45 cells grafted. Good. So I'm going to put this hive tool back. I'm going to kind of tuck this in this way, because I'm going to graft from this frame again, and I want the moisture from this rag to keep these babies good. So I'm going to roll these. So see how they're sideways facing me? This is not how I want them to go in. I want them face down, face down, face down, because the bees are going to cover up these cells, and it'll be the only brood inside these shook swarms that are being tended by all the bees inside the shook swarm. Okay, so we will set this down here for a second. Don't fall, please. Okay, and I'm just gonna I just want to keep these nice and moist because I didn't bring that other rags over, which I should have done, but we'll improvise. Okay, so now what I've got to do is I've got to put on my veil because we're going to open up the shook swarm. Any questions about the grafting before we move on?
Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but her question is, can you please tell us how you make the hive these beautiful babes go into? I think she's asking where they go.
The mating nuke?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to go there next. That's where we're headed to next after we drop in this graft, is we're going to head over to the mating yard. So you can see the little mating nukes that I've made up. We have about 50 in this yard, so you'll be able to see.
Back into the apiary we go.
So listen to them roar. So here is a mating nuke that we, sorry, not a mating nuke, I just said mating nuke, a shook swarm that we made. So there's a frame of pollen, a frame of honey, and about a pound of bees in here. So I'm gonna lift this up, and they're not gonna like it. They're gonna come out quickly. So I've gotta move quickly when I drop this frame in. So normally I would mark on the frame, there'd be masking tape on the bars of what colony I grafted from, but they're all gonna be grafted from Hive 90 because that was identified as a hygienic colony in my apiary. So, oh, here they come. No queen, no brood. So what I'm gonna do is lift this frame up. Okay, I've got my graft. I've got a honey frame, graft, okay, and then I've got to move this frame over, and I've got a pollen frame next. So I'm going to jam these close. So food is surrounding these bees. Put this back. Nothing else, just food. And also the entrance is closed. So there is no entrance for these bees to fly. So they are isolated. Now, one of the other things that's required for this to work well, poor girl, I just killed her with pinching her, is you always, so I have a wet sponge in the bottom of each one of these mating nukes when I put them together yesterday. So you want to have moisture in there. Today is not such a big deal for moisture because we had a heavy rain out here last night. So there is a fair amount of moisture, but I try and keep them out of direct sunlight. And the bottoms of these boxes are also ventilated. There's screens, and I have them lifted up off the ground so they can draw air. And so now all that's in here is a pound of bees, a frame of grafting, so 45 cells, frame of pollen on one side, a really strong frame of honey on the other. That's it. No entrance, nothing. They're all closed off. And then that is now, we leave this for 24 hours. Will come and the cells will have wax rimmed around them. You'll see they'll be loaded with royal jelly through that clear grafting cell, that amber yellow colored cup. And then we'll see it full of royal jelly. And then I take that frame, I gently brush the bees off. If there's some bees on it, it's fine. And then I put it above a queen excluder on a queen right colony, but I make sure that beside the frames of graft, like those grafts I just made, is open brood, not eggs, but larvae. So now we know that these babies are going to be capped queen cells in 7 days, really 5 days. And we know that open brood is going to be open brood until day 9. So there'll be open brood, so nurse bees tending it the whole time that the queen cells are developing. Then the cap brood around the queen cells will be capped at the same time as the queen cells are capped. And then that's when I wait till day 14 to take those cells and carry them to the mating yard and drop them into the mating nukes. Any questions?
No questions, but this is super cool.
Right? Okay, so I have one more graft to do, but we'll come back after the video. I'm just going to put that hive back together. I'm just going to put the hive back together, and I'll mark these bars so I can come back and graft from them after.
cows were out here earlier, but you can see that they've kind of moved on. They're further that way.
So we're going to come back and finish grafting after we're done this show. So I just want to keep track of what frames were good grafting frames. So I'm just going to put this frame back in. I've got a paint pen, so I'm just going to mark it with paint. Ooh, there's some mad bees. We can't leave the brood out because we don't want it to get dried out. Quickly, oh, black. This sucker's not so good anymore. Okay, so smoke the bees down. Put the hive away. Oh, that's heavy, honey. Because I was going to harvest honey this week, but the honey's not quite ripened all the way. But it's not this small amount. And we haven't even really started pulling that canola yet. Okay, so now let's run to the mating yard. Let's get in the truck and go. So if you noticed, I had that big carpet over top of the front window. So a couple years ago, I had this beekeeper, and she called me and she's like, I have disease brood, I have disease, I have disease, I have disease. And I came over, she had this beautiful beehive with an observation window. And she left the observation window open all the time. And so what was happening is the queen would lay eggs in the frame along the window, and then the UV light would penetrate the window and kill the larva. So she ended up with really anomalous looking brood, like damaged. It could have been chalk brood. Some of it was like sac brood looking. It wasn't good. So larvae are UV sensitive. So it's important that when you're grafting, that you're never in direct sunlight. So whether you put a pop tent up, whether you sit under an umbrella, I sometimes will sit under trees, especially if I'm grafting out of my urban hives, like I did a couple weeks ago, out of the hives of an urban garden farm restaurant in the city called Rouge. But in the truck, I like to cover all the windows, and I just use my steering wheel as my stand. Some beekeepers have some pretty elaborate setups, pretty luxurious setups, to be honest. I know some queen breeders have customized trailers that they'll go sit in, and they have a humidifier going, they have a heater going because you want to keep it brood nest temperature. I just do it the way I was taught, which is you do it on the cheap, you do it where you're located. And so in this shoe swap, a lot of beekeepers breed queens out of the back of their trucks, or inside the cabs of their trucks. I mean, you can keep it humid. You have these wet rags. You have this jar of water out for the grafting tools. Everything you need is here, and then you just have people running back and forth with frames of brood that are marked for hive numbers. And then you have the person sitting in the truck just grafting, masking tape. So if they grab a frame out of hive 6, they start grafting out of that. On the masking tape on the bars, they write hive 6, so they can keep track of what colonies are where. So what queens am I producing that are, hive 90, that hygienic verified? I have some that are from hive 72, which was a really good overwintering colony. So there's a lot of different variables to take in mind, I just keep track of what genetics I'm grafting from, because if I'm requeening my own colonies from the queens that I'm producing, I want to make sure I'm not just replacing all of my splits later in the season with the same queen stock, right? I don't want all my hives to have Hive 90 next year. I want to have diversity going into winter. So I'll graft from, 4 or 5 of the best colonies in my apiary throughout the season, but then I'm making sure that I have 4 or 5 queen colonies replacing stock in my apiary. So I'm always keeping that, diversity vibrant. Any questions so far about raising queens? We're almost to the mating yard. I promise we won't be driving for long.
Yeah, so yesterday we put a call out in case anyone had any questions about queen rearing or the mating nukes. So we have a few written down here. One of them is, how long does the grafting process take?
Well, the question about how long does it take to graft, it could be the use of moving larvae into the cups. That has everything to do with skill. So I'm quick, but I've been doing it for quite some time. So I'm pretty adept at handling the tools, handling the cups, knowing what size of brood to be grafting from. As far as the process of preparing, so how I do it is day 0 was yesterday. So day 0 is the day that I make my shook swarms. So you can either make your shook swarms, you shake a pound or pound and a half of bees into a ventilated box that has no entrance or exit, and then you can put your frames with your cups in there for them to get primed. Okay, day 1 is your grafting day, and this is where the grafting wheel comes into play. And do I have it in here? Was it in? I do. Let's look at this. So you can get this from the Tick Transfer program with Renata. So today today is July 8th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So today was the day that we grafted. So if we go July 8th, so here's the month, July 8th was our graft. So we are day 4 for the age of the brood. For management, I am day 1. Okay, so the queen laid the eggs 72 hours ago. The egg tipped over, hatched out to a larva, royal jelly. I'm grafting it into the cups. Then I'm taking day 4 here, we'll say, so day 2. I move from the shook swarm into a queen right finisher on here day 5. And then I leave it in there for a week. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm gonna leave it in there. So if I go in, today is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm gonna come back on Saturday and I can move the cells into my mating nukes before they hatch. So I have a 4-day window. It's important you aim for this day, day 13. And the reason is that if you are new to grafting, you might have accidentally grafted a larva that was a little bit older. Even if it was a day older, the bees will still take care of it. It doesn't mean that it's not a viable queen cell, like it's like an emergency cell or anything like that. It means though that she's a day ahead. So if you push it to Monday or something, you could have one virgin hatch out, emerge, and kill all your other cells. So you want to aim for day 13. Now this day 10 to day 12 here, do not disturb, is because this is when the wings are developing in your queens in the pupa state. And if she falls from the royal jelly that's hardened in here and she rattles around, she'll end up damaging her wings and she can be born deformed. So you never want to disturb your queen cells in day 10 to day 12. So it's really important you keep track of that. You can prepare your mating nukes in this time, and we'll go look at the mating nukes. So the timeline for raising queens really is 2 weeks. A little bit less than that, but when it comes to the bees themselves, but a little bit more than that when it comes to preparing for the graft, because really day 1 is day 4 for your bees. And in management, so my first day of raising queens, is day 4 for the bees. So all the way, if I'm pulling out these queen cells at day 14, I've actually only spent 10 days messing around raising queens. because I do my cell starter on day 0, which is day 3 in the colony. I do my graft, I install it, I switch it over into a queen light finisher day 5, which is day 3 for me. 1, 2, 3. And then I don't go into the hive and grab them for another week. And then on day 13, 14, pull them out and then put them into mating nucs. So it ends up being, 10-day cycles. But we have to take into consideration the time it takes for these queens to mate. So let's go have a look at some of these mating nucs. Together so you guys. Okay, so let's go look at the mating nucs. So this is the mating yard. It's inside a treed area, a tree-lined area, because this is for orientation flights. You want to make sure that your queens know where they live, so they end up back in the hive that they exited from. So my mating nucs are small. Like, I'm not building them up to be full-size colonies. They're little. So if we look inside these mating nucs, what I put in was 1 full frame of capped brood, okay? 1 full frame of drawn comb, and 2 frames of foundation. Because the biggest issue we have here in Alberta is that I'm doing this when nature's providing the food. You can see from here, there's thistle flowering, vetch, alfalfa's flowering. We have canola, we have pasture plants. So if I'm not careful, if this was just full of drawn comb, or if I add too much brood, these will become what's called honey bound. So let's have a peek in here. So I had 1 frame of open brood, 1 frame of drawn comb, 2 frames of foundation on the outside, in a 4-frame nuc box. I'm using deeps because this is the most spacious amount of, I can easily transition these into singles for winter, so I'll combine them in the winter with the mated queen. So let's have a peek here and see if she's mated. So when I install the queens, and I know this one is mated because I was in it yesterday having a peek. Let's have a look here. We've got honey already backfilling where the brood had hatched out. So that's a problem, right? Because if we have honey filling up the comb that's in here, then even if the queen's mated, we won't be able to tell because we won't have any brood. So I'm going to rotate this frame around and open it to the other side. This is just drawn comb. There's no honey in it or anything. So we're going to encourage the bees to use this space. Now let's have a peek. This one is mated. So let's have a look here. And how do we know she's mated? Well, a couple of things. First of all, we look for eggs. And the lighting is kind of poor, so it's hard to see the eggs. But we're always looking for eggs because that is a sign of a queen is mated. If there's no eggs, there's no mated queen. Oops, dead bee there. Then we also look for her. It's easier to find queens in these smaller colonies than it is in full-size colonies. But like I said, they're not marked, especially now. Like if I was going to mark them, I would mark them once I've proven that they're mated. And then we look, so there's eggs everywhere on here, and I don't see her on this frame. So let's look at the next frame. And she could also be a box runner is the term. I was talking to a beekeeper named Arlene yesterday, and she could not find her queen for the life of her. And I said, sometimes queens run boxes. And here she is. Can you see her? She's beautiful. So when I sell queens, I would take this queen and I would put her into a queen cage. So I've already got queen cages prepped because I make them in the evenings over a glass of wine. And my recipe is 1/2 cup of honey to 6 to 8 cups of powdered sugar, or I think they call it castor sugar. And that recipe's on our website too if you're looking for candy and fondant recipes. And then I make it hot, adding 1/2 cup of powdered sugar at a time, mixing it, And then once it's into like a soft pliable, then I just take the queen cages and I plug them, like press it into the fondant. So I have my queen cages plugged, nice soft fondant, pliable fondant. And then what I do is I would pick up the queen, and this is where it gets finicky. There's a lot of tools you can buy to do this, but I just pick her up by the base of both wings, and you should practice with drones. Oops, got a worker in there. So I pick her up by the base of the wings. I would then hold on to more than one leg, because if you don't have two legs, she can spin in a circle, and you don't want her to rip any legs or wings off. I would mark her right there, nice and gentle like, and then I put her head first into the queen cage. You want to go with her? No, you stay in there. And the key thing is to be soft. Like, nothing about my handling feels rough. Like, I try and work. And then this worker really seems to like her, so I'm going to see if I can grab that worker and put her in. There you go, go in there. So I will put, about 4 attendants, sometimes 5 if I'm feeling lucky. And then I put the attendants in here. And I usually the easiest way to grab workers is when they're head first into honeycombs. See? So the wings and the thorax, I can just brush my fingers across their thorax, grab both wings or the base of and then their head straight in. Doo-doo. Oops, sorry, little girl. Let's try this again. Here we go. Head first. Doo-doo-doo. And then if they keep running toward the hole, it's cool. Put them straight up. Bees always run up. I don't know why. Someone told me that. I've experienced it a lot. Bee run up my shirt, put my arm in the air, bee runs up. So you hold it up, they run up, and then you can clip this closed. And then when you're introducing this into a colony, you're going to want to install it like this. So in the heart of the brood nest, and instead of making it shaped like this, where if a worker bee dies, their body could block the candy the bee's chewing through, I like to put it sideways so that even if a dead bee does die, it's not going to block it. Or you could do it sideways like this. If the bee does die, like a nurse bee attendant, that they're going to fall below and they can still exit the queen. Heart of the brood nest, pull the frames apart, wedge it in, and let her go. And they'll chew through that candy in about 24 hours. So this queen is mated, so we've seen eggs and larvae. So I'm just gonna leave this open for her to run out. Off she goes. Perfect. And then these just open like that. There you go. She's like, what's going on? Okay. Now, so this one's mated, great, and we just go through them. I mean, I usually would try and wait at least a week before I'm poking at them, because it's a couple of days after I move them that they're gonna hatch, right? Because I'm moving them on day 13 of 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 13 to 14 days. So it'd be 2 days plus 5 days to mate if the weather's good. If it's been raining a lot, I won't check. You can see all these are painted different colors. So I had different people last year during COVID. I made them available for people to paint with their kids. And so they're all distinctively different. And the landing boards are different directions. You can see here, one is facing one direction, one is facing the other. And so it works that way. Well, let's have a look in actually, because I know this next one is mated too, but I haven't looked here yet. Oops.
Elise, how far is the mating yard from the apiary?
I only have it 3 kilometers apart. So the reason I have it there is because that's my big apiary yard. I have about, I want to say like 20 hives in that yard. And my breeders are there. So if I'm producing drones, I want to make sure the drone congregation area is going to supply this yard too. You could move a hive to your mating yard, and then when you have colonies that you like, you could encourage drone production in those green frames. And then once that green frame of drone brood is capped, instead of moving it to the freezer for rural mite management, you just put it in a nuke box and bring it to the yard, and then you can have a hive that is like 50% drones, which would help populate your drone congregation area. So this is a hive 90, these ones. This is hive 72 graft. So these were done differently. This one was installed July 1st. This one was installed June 27th. So let's have a peek. Let's see this one. So this one was installed earlier. So this might be mated. The other one is newer. It's July 1st. So if she's mated, she'll have just mated. Let's have a peek here. I see eggs. So bingo bango. So everything that is more than 12 days old from when I installed the cells has a mated queen. I don't know if you can see the eggs in the bottom of those cells. There's a mix of pollen and eggs. I want to find a virgin queen for you so you can see the difference. So here's the mated queen. See how dark they are? It's funny. I don't select on color. It's just what I've been breeding from. You can't breed from dead bees, but I find the darker bees, most of my queens are really dark. But again, like gentleness, gentleness, gentleness. Now if we look at this one, and the reason this was July 1st is I had extra queen cells, so I came back and looked through these mating nukes that I dropped in on the 27th or 28th or something like that. I want to say the 26th, 27th of June. And I saw that the queen cups, so here's the graft, that they hadn't survived. They didn't chew through them or whatever. But here you can look, boom. The queen has chewed her way out. Okay, so that's a good sign. So there's likely a virgin in here if she hasn't mated. This is a smaller mating nuke. Let's have a peek and see if we can spot a virgin. Now right away I can tell you that they're not mated. Look at how the bees are scattering and scurrying around. That's not a sign of a colony that's queen right. Okay, so let's have a peek. Just honey. So we've got honey backfilling this comb. Let's see this other frame. Let's see where we're at. Let's see if we can spot a virgin. We've got the brood that was open brood when I made it that's still yet to hatch out, but they're backfilling it with honey. And then here we go. Let's have a look here. So the queen, when she hatched out, she came, there was queen cells because the other one failed. So there was open brood in here. So they tried to raise their own queens. The cell I dropped in, she went through and murdered the queens that were in development. There were clearly like emergency queen cells because you can see that they're facing into the cell versus suspended on its own. Here's a cup here. Let's see. Yeah, again, nothing in it. Let's have a look. I'm not seeing a virgin on here. Let's have a peek. I wonder if this one failed too. The way the bees are fanning and they seem stressed, this may not have taken, so let's have a peek. Now all these nukes were made at the same size, but when you have your first round of grafted cells dropped in and they don't take, what can happen is the forager bees will drift into a colony that has more pheromone security. So that you end up having kind of an inequity of population because of failed graft. Just the first one. Once you've got brood going and your second ones and stuff, they kind of become more colony loyal. But when you first make splits, your bees are disoriented and they're not very loyal because the brood that they're tending doesn't belong to the queen that they are connected to or associated with. I don't see her here, but that doesn't mean she's not on this other frame and I missed her the first time. So let's have a peek. Maybe I missed her the first time. Or she could be out flying. That's always an option too. I don't see anything, so I'm going to leave a question mark here. Okay. Any questions about all this stuff I'm yammering on about?
Yes. So once you remove a queen and put her in a cage to sell, what then happens to the nuke?
It has brood that it's tending, and then I introduce new cells that we just grafted today. So the schedule's a little off because they mated way faster than usual. Usually I'm aiming for like 2 weeks between dropping cells and mating, just to be cautious and careful. But they're like running like crazy. But again, like we've had crazy heat here and optimal for mating temperatures. So here's another one. Let's have a peek here and see what happened here. So again, one frame of drawn comb, one frame of capped brood, open brood, it's now capped, and a cell. So yeah, so as soon as I cage the queen, I will come through cage queens and I'll be dropping cells right away after. So this one, we can have a peek. We have a beautiful queen cell that was grafted, chewed out. Let's have a peek and see if we can see any eggs.
And yes, Live from the Hive is being recorded, so if you missed the beginning or if you're just joining us, you can find this on Instagram and Facebook later today.
Spot the virgin! Here she goes! Do you see her? She looks just like a worker bee, except her thorax is black and she runs. Look at her go. So it's hard to spot virgins. So if you ever wondering why you can't find a virgin in your hive, it's because that is her. That's her. Do you see how much she looks like her female counterparts, the workers? Look at, she's eating some honey. And then she's kind of trickier to pick up too because she can fly, right? She's not encumbered by pregnancy. She doesn't have an elongated abdomen. But you can see that her abdominal cavity, like her abdomen, comes to a point, right? So she's in here. So we've got a virgin. So that's what a virgin looks like. Did everyone see it? Good. Okay, good. So we've got some brood in here still, so we're not going to be totally honey bound, but that's always a concern, is being honey bound in this time of year with raising queens. Any questions?
No questions.
Perfect. Was there any other questions that you had on your list, Ashley, that you wanted to ask from earlier?
Oh yeah. Here, let me grab that list real quick. Oh, so one question is, why don't you buy queens?
They're expensive. Why don't I buy queens? Because A, they're really fun to raise. B, there's a lot of evidence showing that if you're purchasing queens and they're flown to you, that sperm count and viability decreases with temperature variability, both heat and cold. So you could spend $45 on a Kona queen, on a Chilean queen, on a Buckfast bee queen from Ontario, from a Varroa sensitive hygiene queen, from a Saskatraz queen, like Russian hybrids. You can spend all this money and that queen producer may be the best queen producer that you've ever met. But if in transport that queen went up in temperature or low in temperature in the UPS truck, in the, whatever vehicle, the plane, her sperm count could be low and you could have high supersedure rates because of it. So I personally like queens in hand from operator to operator because that allows you to make sure that the quality that I'm producing is maintained. So I don't like shipping queens. But the other thing is like, this is insurance. So this, if I take these colonies 6 weeks from now, they're all going to be 4-frame nucs. I can either push them into winter as a 4-frame nuc or 5-frame nuc, or do what I normally do is these 2 nucs become 1 colony, and I end up having an additional 25 colonies going into winter with young, vibrant queens, plus my own queen stock that does well in our climate with my management style going into winter. So these are way more efficient safeguards, as well as financially way more profitable. I mean, I can find homes for all these queens through an Instagram post, through Facebook, through the queen. If you want to know when queens are for sale, go to my website. You can sign up for the queen notification list, and I send an email out and I say, I have queens available. This week it'll be Thursday, $50 a queen, meet me in a parking lot. And people come and we hang out and we exchange queens and cash and we chat about management and I'm able to give some advice. But the reality is that it ends up being very profitable when I only maintain like 30 to 50 colonies a year. I'm able to go into winter with additional colonies and breed really good stock while doing it comfortably without having thousands of colonies or hundreds of colonies.
And is it okay to allow colonies to mate in the same yard year after year?
Oh yeah. So a neat thing, well, it depends on your location. If you're around other operations and beekeepers, yes. If you're really remote, there's a couple beekeepers I've talked to out in Saskatchewan where they live on like lands that are provincially owned, and there are no beekeepers. That can be a problem, is inbreeding. But in Alberta, there's a lot of beekeepers everywhere. And when it comes to queen genetics, how it all kind of, the cookie crumbles is 25% of the genetics of my colony is the queen I grafted. 75% is the drone congregation area and the diversity there. So all the workers have different sperm plus variants from the drone sperm that's stored in the queen that I've produced. So realistically, this colony is very diverse. Even if I was grafting from the same queen stock all the time, it would take probably 8 years of the same family line before I saw a problem, because realistically, the drone congregation area is where we're getting our diversity. So if you're using the same yard all the time, but you've got a couple hives and you know that there's a commercial beekeeper doing something over there and you know there's a hobbyist over there, realistically, that drone congregation area is going to be very diverse.
And I guess we'll do one last question for our live from the hive today. This one's from yesterday, but someone had a question about whether we had any programs to learn about rearing queens.
Yeah, so we are developing right now our queen rearing course, which will be post-secondary accredited in partnership with the Alberta Beekeepers Commission. Renata Borba from the Tech Transfer Program, she's the coordinator for the Tech Transfer Program, and she has her PhD in bee genetics. She and I are both developing this queen rearing course. So it's going to be launching this fall. And it's a really good course. Almost probably over 50% of the course material will be field components of us in the field doing stuff, explaining stuff, moving stuff, with good animations, as of like how to use the tool, as well as some other really cool resources. So that's all going to be coming out this fall. It'll be the first of its kind in Canada. So we're really excited about that. So we will be doing a queen rearing course coming up this fall.
Yeah, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. We also currently have our free mini course for July out. It's all about supering for wax production. So if you haven't signed up for that, make sure you go and do that. Our Master Academy this month is on July 17th with Michael Bush. And if you want updates, make sure to sign up for our newsletter and you'll keep up to date with us.
And thanks for following us on here, and thank you for joining us for our online field day.
Yeah, see you in a couple weeks.
See you in a couple weeks.